In today's video, we're going to be going through 10 different rappers and debating, do these rappers have any bad albums? And if you guys actually want to catch more debate videos, we have our debate tier up on our Patreon. The link's available in our description and in the pinned comment. And there you guys can access 2 videos exclusively every single month where Ant and I debate on topics just like this.
Yes, sir.
But guys, much love for tuning in. 10 different rappers today. How do you feel about this?
I think you're going to be mad at me today. I'm going to be honest.
I'm going to be mad at you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those episodes where you kind of just look at me like, how did you make these decisions? You know? And
You've piqued my curiosity, my friend.
I'll tell you why. I feel like, I'm not sure, but I really... Okay, the term a bad album, it has to be bad. Like, it has to be unlistenable. Like, I'm thinking like, you know, Logic's Bobby Tarantino 3... I'm thinking like It's Only Me, Excuse Me by Lil Baby.
Total Xanarchy.
Like, and we have some stellar rappers on this list today, and I'm holding them up to that standard. So that's what I'm saying before I get into this.
You got to be a fair critic at the same time. But
no, absolutely. So that's what I'm saying is that a mediocre album and a bad one are two completely different things.
Yes.
So...
All right,
okay, we
let's get started.
Agree, you and I could agree on that today.
I agree on that. Let's get started. We have a bunch of rappers today like 21, Tyler, Jay-Z, Nas, Gunna, and more. But let's start off with 21 Savage. And I feel like we're reaching a point where like there's a government mandate to have 21 featured on every album. And it is getting a bit oversaturated. And I do feel like stylistically he's due for some fine-tuning. But that being said, he's definitely one of the best rappers in the trap scene. And when you look at his catalog... there isn't really too many low points, but I will say this, and tell me if you agree. When I look at the Slaughter tape, that is a bad mixtape. Again, it's not an album. That was like the first tape he ever put out, but you had him rapping over these Zaytoven beats, and...
it's not even that bad, though.
No, it's bad. It's bad, bro.
It's not that bad.
And it's funny because that's a mixtape where he's giving you more energy, and it seems like when he dialed down the energy for Savage Mode, you got a better product.
I understand, but even like the OG Slaughter tape, it's not that bad. You could see like how he ended up coming above it, and I feel like yes, it's mediocre for 21
No, it's
Savage.
a bad project.
Like no, like I don't put this next to like something like Bad Habits. I'm sorry.
Bro,
at least in my
you can't make that be the litmus test for everything, bro.
Okay, but I do, like that's the thing is that I don't go into the Slaughter tape and be like this is completely unlistenable. No, like it piques my interest at certain points, and when I went through it, I'm like, well, okay, it's definitely mid. Like there's nothing really going on with it, but this is not a bad album. So,
I just feel
or
like
a bad
those
mixtape.
anthemic and bright beats did not suit him, and the high pitch inflections were really off-putting as a listen, and I think that one's bad. And then even looking at the Slaughter King mixtape, that one's a bit better, but still not great. But how did you feel about Issa album?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Nowhere near a bad album.
No,
but that's what I was
not.
going to say. 21 Savage does not have a bad album. He doesn't. I don't even want to touch the Metro Boomin stuff. Like, there is legitimately not a single bad album in this man's catalog. And even at that, yes, I guess you could go back to like his older mixtapes and say, well, is it mid? Is it bad? But at that point, I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say he has nothing. He does not have a bad project.
Doesn't have a bad album, but I think he has a bad mixtape with the Slaughter tape. But all right, let's move on to Tyler, the Creator. And I feel like there's certain albums from Tyler that I would consider mid. But to be honest with you, I feel like every time he puts together an album, even looking at a Goblin, there's always a concept or an intention behind a project that he wants to carry out. And that's something that I really respect and value when it comes to Tyler's catalog. But were there any that like, because obviously when it came to this episode, you weren't looking back at like fucking Wolf for certain albums like that. But what albums were you maybe looking at and considering?
I wasn't considering anything,
Nothing,
to be honest with you, because I know where I stand with his entire catalog. I've spoke about this take before. I think Goblin is actually a pretty solid listen, going back to songs like A Slater, going back to songs like She, going back to Yonkers. I have songs I go back to on that album all the time. That could be nowhere considered a bad album. And honestly, I don't even think it's a mediocre album. I think there's a lot of creativity in it. Yes, I do think that the writing was a bit lackluster at certain points and that there was a bit too much shock value at certain points, but for the most part, I'm cool with the album. And I've actually, if you look at my phone right now, one of my most recently searched is actually She with Frank Ocean. So I was bumping it over the weekend.
It's a pretty creepy song though, honestly. Like I feel like that sonically
song, it's so
I just feel like a lot of songs off of Goblin have aged like 2% milk. Like they really have not aged well at all.
But I understand the intention behind it. It was a different time in music as well. Like I just go back because like I'm interested to see where the artist was at, then I could kind of put my like feet in like Tyler's shoes and just kind of see what he was doing creatively back then, and there was a vision, there was something that was going on in here, and like even the production on She is absolutely incredible. It's super catchy. Frank Ocean's vocals are fire. Like the world building is crazy. Kind of reminds me of his Relapse. So even something like Bastard, for example, if you don't have any criticisms with Goblin, or you think it's a good album, well, more power to you. Then Bastard can't even be in this conversation.
I think Goblin is a mid album, to be honest. Not a bad album because it does have redeeming qualities, but I don't know. It just felt like sort of I don't know. I guess the ugly brother to Bastard. I feel like Bastard was sort of like that entrance of that horrorcore raunchy Tyler, and we got maybe more of the same that wasn't as inventive when it came to Goblin. But I think we could agree no bad albums for Tyler, right? Okay.
How about Lil Wayne, man?
Yeah, Lil Wayne. I mean, listen, 25-year career, crazy work ethic, someone who I feel like has not always attempted to make masterpieces per se, even though he does have legendary classic albums within the Carter series and within his mixtape catalog. But at the same time, I feel like when you go into a Wayne album, you're going in for him to flex his lyrical muscles, or you're going in for these epic anthems. And sometimes I feel like he's not curating these projects the best to his capabilities. And when it comes down to it, I think that he does have some bad albums.
I think he has two.
Same.
I went with two.
I have two as well.
Was one of them released this year?
Well, yeah, that's a mixtape. But yeah, the Fix Before the Six is some of the worst Wayne music I've ever laid ears on.
Yeah, I didn't even understand the praise from the community. I'm like, are we listening to the same fucking Wayne project? Really? And it's just like, it was just so cheap. And, you know, the bars were... I can't criticize Wayne for raunchy bars. He's had it his whole career. And I've liked it in certain instances, but I certainly didn't like it on Fix Before the Six. But even looking at Rebirth, man, going back to this album, it's a bad album.
That's a bomb of an album.
Those would be my two selections for today. Fix Before the Six, and then after that, Rebirth. I think those are the only two acceptable answers. I do think he has certain albums that might be a bit more mediocre for Wayne's standards, but regardless, these are the big two outliers for me when it comes down to Wayne's catalog. Rebirth just didn't work as an album. I've said this before. I don't think Lil Wayne and rock music necessarily suits my ear. The cheap auto-tune was at an all-time high on this project, and there's just really, really bad songs.
Even the instrumentals, like they sound like they were made by like a Guitar Hero protege who just decided to pick up an electric guitar.
It just kind of sucks. You have
beats.
dropped the world out of nowhere on this album.
I know, but I'm not gonna make one song make it.
It's a bad album.
It's a bad album without a doubt. So we agree there. I also have Funeral as being a bad album within Wayne's catalog.
No,
2020 release.
It's mediocre.
I think there's a couple of takeaways within that project. When you look at it, there's no direction. It's bloated. The singing performances are awful. There's a lot of fumbles too. A lot of random collaborations. For example, looking at the song that he had, Bing James with J-Rock. Like, you have a really great lyricist like J-Rock on your song, and you're deciding to have this distorted trap beat, and he's sort of giving you these really weak lyrics and a poorly written verse. Then you have J-Rock spazzing
but
off.
You also get songs like Mahogany, for example, that are like top tier moments, let's say, within New Wayne's career. That's what I'm saying.
There's not enough of those to make it even a mid album for me.
I think it's mediocre. I don't think it's a bad album. It's definitely not on the level of fucking Rebirth. That is for sure.
No, it's not that bad, but there's still varying degrees to what a bad album is to me, at least.
I don't know. Like, once you get to the bad category, bro, like, you're at the bottom of the barrel. That's the reason why I don't want to bring in Funeral for this one, is that I find it mediocre, but it's not as bad as Rebirth.
Okay. Next up, we have Jay-Z, who has an impeccable discography. One of the only rappers that we could say has 3+ classics within his solo catalog. But there is one album that people seem to universally dislike, and that's Kingdom Come.
I went through it again.
Which was the comeback album. And to be honest with you, I think that, like, it's similar with Nas's catalog, which we'll get into later, but with Jay-Z, I think that because it's such a forgettable album, and I'll be honest with you, this is one album where it's like, if it was erased from history, I would not blink an eye. But that being said, there is highlights on this album, and it's nowhere near being a bad album.
Bro, are you serious? It's actually a good listen.
It's a good album.
That's what I was going to say. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I went through it again for this episode, and I'm like, I got a new rotation this week. I have some songs that I'm going to be putting into this rotation.
Bro, that prelude intro?
It's crazy.
Wow.
There is some crazy shit on Kingdom Come. And I think it was maybe the reception was jaded because it was the return album after the retirement for the Black Album.
Yeah.
So people were like, well, this is not up to Jay-Z standards, yada, yada, yada. Kingdom Come is on the same level for me as like Magna Carta. I'm being honest with you.
And that's what I want to say, is that he does have like some like
questionable.
Subpar for his catalog albums.
But he does not have
like a Blueprint 3 or a Magna Carta. But
exactly.
no bad albums. And even Kingdom Come, bro. I was finding songs like Lost One where he's giving you really deep introspective writing about the pain and guilt that he felt after losing his nephew, which was based on a true story. And when you have songs of that magnitude, or even a song like an Oh My God where Just Blaze is going crazy with the vocal sample loop, like there's too many highlights, there's too many amazing moments for you to be like, fuck
even
this.
the Dr. Dre production on
Yes.
30 something, there's just way too many highlights on Kingdom Come. And some people have criticisms with like some of the Hard Knock volumes, but to be honest with you, I go back to those all the time and I'm kind of okay with everything.
Yeah, the volume series is pretty fire in my opinion.
So I'm okay with, listen, not even any mediocre albums to my opinion,
Yeah.
at least with Jay-Z. But let's go into Lil Uzi Vert, all right? Because this is another rapper that Lou and I have criticized over the past couple of years for kind of putting out lackluster projects that seem to lack any sort of direction, and kind of finding Uzi in a situation where he's trying to find a sound, or maybe he has a sound, but it just doesn't sound complete to where it was maybe at when he first started off his career. And I want to say this, starting I Love His Rage, I'm cool with that. We're not touching that, right?
No.
Lil Uzi Vert versus the World, we're not touching
No.
that. The Perfect Love Tape, we're not touching that.
Don't even bring these
All right,
up.
Love Is Rage 2, fine. I think it comes down to the Pink Tape and Eternal to Take.
Yeah.
Technically, for the sake of this episode, I could say that Uzi does not have a bad album, but the Pink Tape was on the verge of bad.
That's exactly how I feel. I think the Pink Tape was on the verge of bad. I mean, it felt like more of a playlist than anything. Even looking at the curation, you had like Werewolf and CS back to back, which were like Uzi's attempt at metal, which played off horribly. And then right after, you have Pluto to Mars, which is like
Werewolf is alright.
But anyways, like I was saying, Werewolf and CS, and right after you have Pluto to Mars, which is like a melodic Uzi song, and you're like, how does this fucking make any sense? So poor curation choices. Apart from that, like you were saying, I think that Uzi is in the poorest form of his career in terms of dropping his two weakest albums back to back. Even though Eternal Take has grown on me, I think that he does have some fiery rapping performances on there. But Pink Tape was a disaster. Bloated Mess. Mid-album, though. Not a bad album, but it was on the verge of getting there.
Yeah,
me.
so I'm going to say Lil Uzi Vert, no bad albums. But
No
let's go
bad
on
albums
to
for
Nas.
Uzi.
So Nas's career is interesting because people either underrate his catalog to the point to where like they just say like, well, he has maybe only one classic and he kind of fell off after his debut, which I don't understand. And then they try to nitpick Nostradamus. So I did a bit of homework and I went back into Nostradamus, and again, same situation as Kingdom Come. I found some songs that I actually really do enjoy again, and I think it's just maybe like, yes, it is mediocre for like Nas's standards, but that is nowhere near a bad album, bro. I am sorry.
Listen, Nostradamus is one of those albums that like I'll never voluntarily listen to. I'll never wake up one day and be like, you know which Nas album I want to do a re-listen for? Nostradamus.
There
No,
we go.
that's not going to happen. But I'll say this. I think that there is a stigma around it because when you look at the trajectory of Nas, you had Illmatic, then you had It Was Written, then you had I Am, and then you get Nostradamus, and people were asking themselves, has Nas's prime ended? Is this the end of it? Or are we now to expect these average, mediocre albums? And I think that because it was so subpar in comparison to those classics, people started this narrative that it was bad. But listen, there are weak points. Like, for example, You Owe Me with Genuine, which was this weird club record. And there's obviously really low levels within it, but also his worst ever beat selection on an album.
Yeah, his
on
beat selection was poor.
It was such uneventful beats. But again, there's still moments. It feels like a diluted It Was Written to me, but it's not a bad album.
Nowhere near a bad album. That's what I was going to say, too, is that I guess it's just because the standard that we hold Nas up to, you expect maybe a bit more out of an album experience. But when you have to look at the album pound for pound, it's nowhere near a bad album.
Did you have to look at anything else? I think I've seen some people say that like Streets Disciple was a double album that was a bit bloated. People say Nazir with Kanye West was a horrible.
No, I've given my I've given my takes on those albums.
Okay, so we're on the same page then.
All right, let's keep going on with this. I thought you were going to be mad at me for how lenient I was with this episode.
Honestly, maybe I'm just as lenient. I don't know, but I think that we're about to disagree when it comes to Gunna. Because I believe that you say he has no bad albums. There you go.
Gunna has no bad albums. So what's the bad album?
Listen, I think that I really obviously enjoy the Drip series, the Drip season series, excuse me. I think One is a pretty good album. I think that A Gift and a Curse might be a mid-album, but it's not a bad album. So I would say that Drip or Drown 2 is the bad album within his catalog very easily. And I would say, listen, it's super cool to get like those atmospheric and aquatic beats from Turbo and Wheezy within the first half, but when you're going through the performances, there's no personality. There's no heart to the music. Gunna sounds so stiff for a lot of these performances, like he's putting no effort into this. Let's get a look at Ant's face right here because he's in absolute awe. Why? What did I do, bro? How are you going to convince me that Drip or Drown 2 is a good album, bro? I'm sorry. You reach a point where like all the flows and beats just blend together. There's no catchy hooks. And there's a run of songs from like Big Shot to On a Mountain to Out the Hood where you have these cheap strings being sort of carried on from one to the next and just recycled rhyme patterns. And you're like, what are we doing here? This is a bad album.
Man.
What do you have to say?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with me?
What's wrong with
It's Drip or Drown 2, bro.
Bro, this album is fire.
You're making it seem like there's a cult following behind it.
I think a lot of Gunna fans appreciate this album. This is like one of those albums that I actually have in rotation quite a lot from Gunna. I'm going back to this
Derek
album.
Jeter?
Yeah, Derek Fisher.
Sorry, my bad. You see how forgettable the track list
Derek
is?
Fisher, you should know your track list before calling it bad, eh? Songs like Who You Foolin' on your Same Young with Playboy Cardi. My goodness, bro, what are you doing? How is this a bad call?
To me, it's like the definition of one of the most generic trap albums there's out there.
But that's okay. You could say it's so generic, and you could say it's one known. That's not a bad album, Lou.
Absolutely.
Richard Millie playing. There's full of bangers on this album, low key, bro. Come on. I've seen us bump this album. Like what?
You've never seen me fucking pull up Drip or Drown 2 and press
You have
play.
never played Who You Foolin'.
I played like Three-Headed Snake here and there, but that's about it.
You've never played Who You Foolin'.
I played it. I enjoy it. Not really. Not really, bro.
I don't even wanna give this time of day. I know I'm not gonna reason with you. I know how you feel about Gunna. I think this is an atrocious take. It is atrocious. This is assault.
We recently did our top 50 rappers of all time list, and I'm low-key surprised you didn't put him there for how much praise you give him.
I fucking love Gunna.
Is he in your top 100, you think?
No, he's not on my good. Hey, don't try and fucking flip this on me and try to make some comedic value.
You told me that I couldn't name 100 rappers better than Gunna. Then I did it, and now you're going back on your words saying that he wouldn't even be in a top 100 list.
Okay, so regardless though, don't even try to flip this on me, bro. You just said Drip or Drown 2 is bad. Let me know how you guys feel about that in the comments section because that's not a good fucking take, man. You got to go back to this album, listen to it again, but let's go to Lupe Fiasco. Lupe Fiasco is a very interesting artist when it comes to his catalog. You have incredible albums in there all the way throughout. Even his 2022 release was absolutely incredible. So any bad albums on your end?
Absolutely. I think that when it comes to Lupe's catalog, it's very tight. It's condensed. He's given us, I think, like 8 studio albums. He has a bad album to me. And I think that even when it was sort of like a revival situation before I listened to Lasers, where it's like, even just looking at that track list and seeing features from like Skylar Grey and Trey Songz, I'm like, this is a fever dream, bro. Like, why is this happening? And obviously, it was his big pop attempt. I respect him for like wanting to go out of his comfort zone and try to make an accessible album. But at the end of the day, when I'm going through that track list, it's really unlistenable in terms of
how forced it feels.
All the vocal filters sound absolutely awful from Lupe.
And I think what was interesting about his career choice at that point is that obviously Lupe Fiasco had mainstream appeal back then, but this was supposed to be the album that was gonna like shoot him into like the mainstream. And I just think that like at that point Lupe knew that, you know, hey, listen, this is maybe just not for me, and I gotta go back to what I was doing. And then after that, you get incredible albums all the way throughout. So maybe you do need this one to be able to get a Tetsu in the future, for example.
Is it bad to you though?
I have it on the verge. I said it was bad for the sake of the episode because I do feel like it is a bad album musically. Like I go through the entire project and it's just like I've never really been a big fan of pop attempts. That's my biggest thing. And like I really don't like listening to music that feels forced. For myself, I have to get into an album experience. I want to enjoy it. I want to hear something with substance. And especially, you know, a rapper like Lupe Fiasco, you're not going to Lupe Fiasco to listen to a God's Plan. You're going to Lupe Fiasco to listen to a mural. You know, so to be able to see him kind of like stoop to that level, to be able to get to that point that he wanted to maybe get to at that point, I mean, listen, respect him for trying it out, but it just didn't work. And I've spoken to a lot of Lupe fans that really don't like this album.
Yes.
And that absolutely despise it. So I can understand why. Because imagine like you listen to Kendrick Lamar one day and he releases a full pop record that feels plastic, full of really cheap
But hey,
vocal
listen,
effects.
Eminem did it with Recovery and it wasn't horrible. Like sometimes these pop attempts do pan out, but I just don't think this is a good example of that. What about Drogas Light, the one that came before Drogas Wave? This is one that I don't think is a bad album, but you do have Lupe tackling more like trap production, a lot of features on it.
Yeah, but low-key's still fire, though.
Yeah.
Because you get really high energetic, like, Lupe performances, and you kind of see him out of his element from, let's say, the traditional stuff that you'd expect from him. So, overall, yeah, it's the only one bad album.
Okay, we're on the same page there. One bad album for Lupe Fiasco. But next up, we have Meek Mill. And it's interesting for Meek Mill just because I feel like he has like a very average catalog. You know, he doesn't have necessarily maybe a universal classic, but does he have too many poor projects?
Do you think
either?
people consider Dream Chasers a classic?
I think, yeah, I think it's part of like a classic mixtape era, and it's one of those mixtapes that people point to being like, music was different when like Dream Chasers 2 hit and shit. Like, I think people have that sort of.
But I'm not going to touch any of the Dream Chasers.
No,
series. No, none of the DCs.
Definitely not.
The only one that I was really verging on, and I think we did even an album review to this, was Expensive Pain.
Exactly.
And going back to Expensive Pain, I'm not going to lie to you, I might even consider changing my score down to bad.
Really?
Low-key. It's like I was going back to it and I was listening to the forced flows and the auto-tune and the subject matter, and it's such a lackluster project and there's not much going on for it. But I mean, listen, I gave it a mid rating, and for the sake of the episode too, like, I have to give it a bit more of like a deeper dive to say, like, okay, like, I'm changing my rating now. So I guess basically because I'm playing on my review, I can't see he really has a bad album. That's easily his worst.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always appreciate versatility from artists. But when it came to Meek Mill giving me a bunch of melodic, auto-crooning cuts, I'm like, listen, sometimes it is best to stay in your lane. Like, I go to Meek Mill for being a motivator. I go to his music to really hype me up and to really get me in a certain zone of hyped energy. And when it came to songs like Love Train on here or Love Money, they're atrocious. They're really awful songs.
Would you say Expensive Pain is a bad album?
I'm not going to say it's a bad album, though, just because there are tracks on here like Hate On Me, the intro, or How and Moneybag Yo that are good. You're getting that breathless flow from Meek Mill. You're getting that energy, but do they come too few and far between? Yes. So I'm okay with anything, but for the sake of this, I'll say it's not a bad album. I don't think he has a bad album.
I agree with you. All right, to end this episode off, let's go into Freddie Gibbs. I think Freddie Gibbs has one of the best, maybe a couple of album runs for the 2010s decade that we've ever seen. We're not touching anything with, The Alchemist or Madlib. That's not even getting into consideration. But any solo material that you feel like should be in contention here.
There's some that were in contention. Like Cold Day in Hell, I think, has maybe some lackluster production and some beats that sound dated to me. But Freddie's performances are still pretty impressive throughout that project. I feel like the one album that people, point the finger at sometimes when it comes to Freddie's catalog would be Shadow of a Doubt. But even looking at that project, if I'm correct, I think that was like inspired by a shooting incident that happened to him outside of a record store where he was shot, and it was sort of like a reset mode for him where he sort of got more introspective on this album. You have amazing production from like Boy Wonder, from Mike Dean. So production hit for me. A lot of great performances, rapping alongside Black Thought. Like, yes, it's maybe the sleepiest and most boring Freddie album for me.
But the rapping is still like low-key top tier.
Pretty top tier.
Yeah, it's still top tier for Freddie standards. That's what I'm gonna say. He doesn't have a bad album. Even going back to like old like projects like Straight, for example, I really can't find anything that I'm like, well, that's a bad project.
Like, I would definitely cut songs off of Shadow of a Doubt, but I think it's still a pretty good entry into the catalog.
Yeah, it is a good way to start.
I don't think Freddie has any bad albums.
I don't think Freddie
has one of the most consistent discographies of the modern hip hop era, and I think you agree with me there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So listen, I thought you were gonna be mad at me because I was super lenient for this.
Gunna, you were too lenient.
No way. Drip or Drown 2 is a fucking sick listen. It's not like an incredible album. I'm not saying that it's amazing and that it's on the level of Wanna for me, but there's definitely value in that track list. You made it sound like it was a dumpster fire. Come on,
it's not good.
Stop it, bro. Get out of here with that take.
It ain't it.
I still don't believe you with the take. But guys, listen, where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? And which albums would you like to see? Sorry, not which albums. Which rappers would you like to see us go through for this next installment of Do These Rappers Have Any Bad Albums? Thank you guys so much for the recent support. And like we said at the beginning of this video, if you guys do want to access our Patreon plan, which, we're updating on a daily basis, we're uploading live album reactions on there, we're doing these types of debate videos on there as far as like extra bonus content. We're doing them every single month. So if you guys want to check it out, check the link in the description, check the pinned comment, and thank you guys for the recent support on the Patreon. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much again for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.